Dan, welcome on the show.
Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you on. Now, I'm going to give Dan a little bit of an intro. Dan is a stand-up comedian.
Yep.
You also do trivia nights.
Yeah, I love those.
And you also organise comedy nights. So you're a bit of you're a bit of a mover and shaker, would you say?
Yeah, try to put my finger in a few pies and see which one tastes the best. And turns out all three taste all right, so keep eating all three till one day maybe I get a slightly bigger pie version of one of the three.
Well, what's interesting, I often said this, that there were three types of comedians.
Yeah.
There were comedians who just did comedy. Then there were comedians who did comedy and promoting.
Yeah.
And then there were comedians who did the high-end stuff like radio, TV, film, and like broke through the ceiling of it all.
Yeah.
But that middle place is a place where you contribute to the scene, right? I mean,
for sure.
What's it like approaching a venue and saying, "Hey, we want to run a comedy night here," or a trivia night, or whatever?
So I've run like shows for a while. At the very first time I ran a show, just so to give some quick backstory, was in 2008 in Melbourne, actually, at Dirty Secrets.
Oh wow!
So I'll tell you the first.
Did you start that? Did you start this?
No, like I'd like to take credit for that, but apparently it's been around for ages. So apparently, like before me, several other comics and down the line, and I've forgotten their names, not because any reason. Just I think maybe. I feel like Cole Cameron maybe ran it at some stage, but I don't want to go on record on that. Could be wrong, but I am on record for that. I think maybe he had a go at it and did well, but I'm not sure. I could have got him confused with running another room because so much has happened with comedy. But yeah, so I'd never done it before, and I just thought, it'd be good to run a room. So I went over the road and talked to the guy, and he gave me a time to meet up with him. And the very first time I did it was very intimidating because I've never had any experience doing it. And I was like, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? And I went in there, and the guy was really easy to talk to, a nice guy called Zach. The bar's actually named after him. It's his name backwards. So his name is Zach Poitier. So it's Kaz Rytop, so that's backwards is Zach Poitier, I think, Okay. And he was very easy to talk to and low pressure. He said, look, if you can bring in a few each week, that'd be great. Just keep your stuff downstairs, and we've got it upstairs at the bar, and, just don't be too crazy and basically do your thing. And that was the case. I remember we had one issue once, and it was scary because I was like, oh no, we're going to get chucked out, something's gone wrong, whatever. And it was such a nothing issue that it was such a wave of relief, like, he goes, Dan, we're going to have a talk. And we sit down. It seems very grave. And then he goes, see this can of Coke? And I go, yeah, what about it? What's going on? And he goes, well, this is an outside beverage, Dan.
Oh,
and we do not allow outside beverages inside. So if you have any friends that are going to bring in cans of Coke, bottles of water, just let them know that's an outside beverage. And outside beverages are not allowed inside.
Well,
so that was the issue. And then from then on, the only thing that we had to remind people to do was the outside beverages inside. And obviously being comedians, we made a little dumb joke about it. Whenever anyone had a beer, we were like, hang on, is that outside beverage or is that inside beverage? And just silly stuff like that.
Yeah. The good news is this guy's not petty. That's the good news, right? Now, Dan, I don't know how you got into comedy in the first place. I'm kind of keen to find out the inception story of, like one day you're at uni or school or whatever, I imagine, or you're a bricklayer or whatever. Yeah, sure. And then the next minute you're going, stuff it, I'm going to get on stage and be funny. I mean, tell us the whole...
so always like a bit of a class clown, that kind of thing, just little silly little drawings of teachers and just impressions and just stuff like that. Didn't really think anything of it, just... entertaining my friends and things. And then in New Zealand, this TV show called Pulp Comedy came about, and it was the first time Kiwis had seen Kiwis doing stand-up comedy at a club filmed on TV. It was quite high production values for the time in the 90s. And I was like, oh, wow, you could actually do it here. Because I love comedy, but I never thought... in New Zealand, you're not allowed to dream, that's for Americans and Australians and the British and stuff, especially back then. Not so much now. But that was the culture. And I was like, oh, well, we could actually do it. And these guys are actually funny. And, And then so that was the, the seed in my mind. And then when I finished high school, I was like, I've got to try and find out where I could do stand-up. And I found out that people were doing it at Otago University. And I was like 21 or something at the time. And I had a couple of cracks, 2 or 3 gigs, very up and down. And, you know, your ego's pretty brittle then. So I was like, well, you know, maybe it's not for me. And then I had a break, and then I started again at about 26. So that's the origin story. Sorry.
Oh, okay. You started again in when?
So I did the first few gigs when I was about 21. Like 3 or 4 gigs.
Oh, and then you started when you were 26.
Yeah, in Australia. Okay. And
okay, so we want to drill into this sort of bit. Okay, your very first gig.
Yeah.
You're sitting there. They're about to call on Dan Brady, because you know, some people who watch our show are going to be thinking, man, I wouldn't mind trying comedy.
Yeah, of course.
You know, or whatever. Okay, the very first gig. What were the nerves? Did you go to the toilet 10 times? I mean, do all that stuff? Were you drunk? I mean,
Nah. Well, I was 21 or 20 even, I think. I had that dumb fearlessness of youth. So I thought, I'm really funny at high school and people think I'm funny and blah, 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 and just like total young idiot kind of thing. So I went out there just, like I did a lot of prep, to be fair. It was terrible. If you watched it today, I'd imagine it'd be terrible. But I had all that youthful enthusiasm and confidence of a young man that the crowd just liked the energy of it. So the first gig went really, really well. So I got a huge head, you know, and the guy let me do 20 minutes because a couple of the guys didn't turn up or whatever. And I'm riffing and having fun, and a lot of the crowd was my mates and things too. So, you know, anyway, so I thought I was, I'm going to be great at this, right? And then the next 3 or 4 gigs or whatever it was I did, slowly reality, you know, interfered with that. And I realized, wow, this is pretty hard. But because I was young and arrogant and stupid, I kind of didn't want to do the effort. I was like, nah, it's just this town, and it's everybody else. You know how when people are young, they just sometimes blame the world and don't take accountability. Well, so I did that for a while until I realised I was the idiot. Yeah.
No, but I mean, I think sometimes, you know, people say things like, that's an excuse.
Yeah.
But excuses are exactly what they are. They're a reason why something hasn't worked. I mean, I think the word excuses gets a bad rap. You know, people say, you're making excuses. Well, that's what an excuse is. It's a reason why something hasn't worked. So then maybe it was New Zealand. Maybe it was limited venues, limited opportunities. So you came to when did you come to Australia? You came to Australia.
So I got into advertising and for radio stations after I finished uni, and then a job popped up in Western Australia. Got a job in advertising for a radio station. Saw an ad for Raw Comedy. Another funny guy from work was like, why don't we give it a go? And he had a similar story. He had a couple of cracks in Sydney and he lived in WA, and we had a crack. We did pretty good for Raw, you know, like got through to the semis or whatever, feeling good about ourselves, and then started doing the open mics, etc., and got the bug and got hooked on stand-up when, it was about 26, I think, in Perth. But we were travelling from Bunbury to all these gigs, so we were like a 2-hour drive every night after work to do these open mics.
Well, that's the dedication, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the love affair people have with comedy, I think, you know, Dan.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
So how many gigs would you say you've had under your belt since you've since you started? I mean, were we up to like 500, or was it 300, 600, 700? Or?
I have no idea, purely because I always hate telling people I've done it for X amount of times because there's some big gaps, you know? So I'll just give you a good example. Like, you know, these young guys like your Alessios and that crew from Dirty that gig all the time, which is awesome. So they've only lived in a world where they've been in a great city, like Melbourne, we can gig all the time, right? So I've lived in places, which is my fault, obviously, in places where I was doing like 1 gig a month and things like that. Yeah. So through fault of my own, I haven't stuck with one scene and kind of done the traditional trajectory. So it may seem like a long chunk of time, but there's been some really fallow years, and even some years where I just wasn't feeling it, and I think I did 1 gig, you know, that year kind of thing. So I don't know the numbers. Yeah.
Well, Dan, talk us about that. I mean, that's, you know, because there is no normal path to comedy greatness, right? And so I did comedy in the 90s until the early 2000s. I did it for like 12 years.
Yeah.
Then I had a 20-year break. Yeah. And I did about 5 gigs in 20 years.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I actually want the skill. Like, I'm not going to be a big comic. I'm not going to be, you know, I'm kind of, you know, I'm 56. I'm not, you know, I'm kind of like, I mean, you know, people always say, age doesn't matter. But the point is, that's not what I'm aiming for. I'd love the skills.
I'm kind of in that camp too. I'm a bit of a lifer. I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
If some other things happen and it gets, you know, a bit get big. This is why I'm not going to get big. I can't say the word. If things get bigger, then maybe. But I'm pretty realistic. I think I'm just going to be a knock around kind of club comic or whatever. I can't see myself like, getting picked up for TV and radio, and I don't really do that style anyway. So even if I got really good at what I'm trying to do, it would always be a little culty, weird thing, I feel, which I'm happy with.
So someone on the internet was talking about impact over remuneration. The fact that if we forget about the money, and we forget about the buying the new cars and the houses and everything, and we just go, look, I'm just going to have impact. That's pretty much what you're doing, Dan, because you're a mover and shaker, running rooms, giving people opportunity. What advice would you give the newbies out there? I mean, new guys. Someone starting out, because you see a lot of you'd run the trade.
Yeah, no, I would say they remind me exactly what I was like when I was that age. Is they're in a rush. They're really like, why did he get that gig? Why did she get that gig? And even when you break it down with them, and you're like, well, he got that gig because his mates were such and such, and they hook each other up. And they're like, well, that's not fair. And you're like, well, this is life. This is how it works. How did that person get that gig? Blah, blah, blah. And you'd be like, oh, because they had a great gig at this gig, and this people having to see them. And they'll be like, but I had a great gig there, and they weren't there. It's always life is unfair. Woe is me which I still do, of course, we all do. But they're young, so they're very fixated on that. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. And they're in this mad rush to kind of get to the top of the mountain. But you're like, even if you got these gigs,
nothing changes anyway.
No, they're not ready for them. That's the thing. It's just like, and I was the same too. You wanted these real hot gigs, but if you're 2-3 years in, you're gonna be exposed, But they're thinking, I don't know. Maybe they think they are ready, or maybe they think they're just gonna fluke it or something. So who knows? And to be fair, some people are quick studies, and they can be 2 or 3 years in. They get the hot gig, they smash it. Everything goes up. So there are obviously loads of examples of that, but the average person, it's going to be a marathon, not a sprint. And sadly, most of them want it to be a sprint. But the guys and girls that I really like in the scene that I talk to a lot know that, hey, it's going to take time. Yeah.
Rick Rubin, for those of you watching,
great producer. Yeah,
great producer, is doing a documentary about comedians.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Rick Rubin basically said that in the documentary he's making about comedians, that a lot of them have this 10-year drought. And then in the 10th year, they kind of, something clicks and they're on their way. And as all their friends are backpacking around and going out Saturday, Friday nights drinking and all that sort of stuff, they're sacrificing really a decade of their life to get to that point. And actually, I was talking to Tom Seeger, is it Tom Seeger? I don't know, I can't remember his name.
Tom Seeger, he's a great comic guy, older guy,
He said it took him 10 years. If I've got the right guy, he said it took him 10 years of failing and dipping and up and down.
And you'll be right.
And so what do you think about the 10-year theory? Is that
I think
because people get weirded out in that time.
No, I think that's fair, but I think where I've gone wrong and other people have gone wrong is you kind of want to, if you can, do it in the same spot. So if you do 10 years, but you've done it like I have, and it's like you're here, you're there, you're there, you're there, it's hard to kind of build the traction. But if you did a 10-year block in like a Sydney or Melbourne or London or Auckland, whatever, biggish, decent scenes, word will, if you're good enough and you're not a dickhead, word will travel and you'll have a nice upward trajectory.
Oh man, I've got no chance.
But all the bouncing around is just, it's like you got all these voices going, he or she's good, but they're all over the place, And with the internet, the world shrunk a little bit, but it's still much better to be in the one city, even if it's 5 years, and everybody is just like, oh, that guy girl's good, and the word travels, and etc. And then it can build.
What about, Dan? What about the clicks in comedy? The fact that a certain room doesn't want a 56-year-old, like a Red Betty, whatever, doesn't want a 56-year-old guy coming in.
Yeah.
But they do want a 22-year-old LGBTIQ person who's cute and fluffy. But tell us about the clicks. I mean, for those who are watching who have an interest in comedy, I mean, people get shut out, do they, a little bit? Or
Yeah, I feel like there's two ways of looking at that. It's like there's the one way, which we all do, and I'm guilty of it too, is when you're like, why don't they want me? You know what I mean? And then there's the other one when you kind of have to break it down and just be like, hey, look, this is what they're going for, and that's what they're going for, and that's fine, and let them have their sandpit, I'll have my sandpit, there's enough sand for everybody, rather than have a kind of a famine mentality, which I feel like we're all guilty of doing, of kind of thinking that all the gigs, they're going to run out, so I've got to get all the gigs and eat all the gigs, and no one else can have the gigs, and
Is it down young person's game, comedy? I mean, because I look at guys. I mean, I've had Cameron Murray.
Oh, I love Cam. He's a great guy.
And he. I mean, I look at him and think, phenomenal talent.
Yeah,
like working,
very funny,
doing 5 to 7 gigs a week.
Yeah.
Now and very marketable, by the way.
Works hard. Nice looking young guy.
Yeah, nice and good looking. He's got everything going for him. Looks innocent, actually. Looks like kind of he's not gonna not gonna trip anyone up, and that's marketable. You know what I mean?
Likeable,
all that type of stuff. Is that his world comedy, or can someone kind of be like a 40-year-old single mom and go find the same acceptance?
I don't think there's for sure there's that's a more obvious trajectory. Like if you're a young, attractive guy or girl, that's like a more conventional kind of potentially upward road. But funny's funny, and you can be whatever if you find as much funny in your angle as you can, and you get on with everybody, and you find the rooms that'll book you. You can definitely go upward too. But for sure, there's always, just like in everything, everybody has advantages. Like you could be a basketball player who's 5'8" and find a way through to the NBA and be great, but it might be a little bit harder than the guy who's 7 foot. So there's all that, stuff like that. So definitely in Melbourne, which very values diversity, which is fine and a nice thing, and white guys have had more than enough opportunities, so I get it. So if you are a funny, marketable, attractive 25-year-old person of colour or something, Melbourne's going to eat that up. So there's going to be opportunities there. But again, it would be pretty rich for me or for you, for us to get salty, given all the opportunities white people had over the years and all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. But there's always flavours of the month in terms of what the world wants at any given time. And
I'll tell you a story. I was living in North Fitzroy. I wasn't doing comedy, but there was a comedy night on down in North Fitzroy, in that it's got a bar at the front and a kind of amphitheatre at the back, I know
those types of bars. Yeah.
Anyway, I saw a very young Geraldine Hickey.
Oh, cool.
And it was only kind of like her maybe 20th gig. It was back in, what would have been 2008 around. Or And I said to her, not mad, but you have absolutely got it.
Oh, she would have loved that,
She had it from the start.
Yeah.
You can kind of tell. Do you find that with people?
Some people are quick studies, for sure.
I looked at Geraldine Hickey and I said, because I don't think she really believed so much in her own brand, because she was starting out. Yeah. But I looked at her, I said, you have absolutely got it. You've got everything they're looking for.
Well, I've got a brief anecdote about her. So I moved here in 2008 after the Perth. I started in Perth, and then I did the thing which a lot of the non-Melbourne comics do. They're like, I'm going to try Melbourne. I'm going to, throw my hat in the ring, give Melbourne a crack. So I came here in 2008 with my partner at the time. Anyway, I was pretty new, obviously, so I was doing all the same gigs that Geraldine was doing. And she was great, and she was heading upwards then as well. But she was very down on herself. I remember I hosted some gig, and to be fair, I didn't do a very good job hosting. I was early days of hosting. And they didn't like her that night. And I'd seen her a bunch and thought she was great. And I came back as the MC, and I was a wee bit salty to the crowd. And I was like, that was Geraldine Hickey. She's a great storyteller. You got to give her more than that. Come on, kind of thing. And Geraldine said, which I think is totally fair because I was a dog of an MC. She was just like, Dan, just leave it alone, kind of thing from the back. And I don't think she's being a dick to me. It was just more kind of like, I didn't have the authority to say that because I'd lost the room. And secondly, also when I had a chat to her, realised, oh wow, she's got a lot of self-doubt for someone who, even like, I don't know, a few years in was pretty strong, you know?
Yeah,
so she didn't actually believe it almost that me and the other comics were saying, hey, you're really great.
Yeah, I mean, when I told them, I said, yeah, you're going to make it. I said, I might have even said to her, you're the ABC television's prime person that they go for.
Yeah, funny, clever, and also the angle they're playing.
And I wondered if she thought I was taking the piss, but I was dead set no. And actually, do you know American Rosso? Do you know American Rosso?
Yeah, the radio guys.
Yeah, I saw Merrick do his first gigs at the ESPY.
Oh, cool.
And it's this magic. He just had it. Yeah, even from gig, like he wasn't like polished comedian or whatever. But he just was
you could see
so
the
likable
X factor,
and it's made me think sometimes, Dan, that maybe I should be in the promoting businesses instead of the comedy business, because I got an eye for it, you know what I mean? Or racehorses or something.
I mean, if you can see it and you're passionate about it, and you want to do that, it's always a good thing. Like,
but do you see new comics go, bang,
yeah, for sure. But I suppose the only way that I would go with this totally different angle is like, how do I say this? So like, I see it, but for me, I love promoting talent and all that sort of stuff, but I'm always more excited by the weirdos. So say someone is like, oh, they're going to make it, definitely, I can see it, but I'm like, I don't know, like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, just being bluntly honest, I don't really care, because that's not the world that I inhabit. So I'm like, good on them, power to them, but I'd rather find like some diamond in the rough, some guy or girl or whatever who's really weird and might not be liked by everybody, but could have an interesting kind of, what do you call career on the slide? Like when someone's like, oh, that guy's going to be on TV, or that guy, I'm like, whatever, who cares?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a really
good on them, don't get me wrong, no bitterness, but like whatever kind of thing. Like,
You know, a friend of mine, we were talking about, did you ever see Norman Gunston? Are you familiar with Norman Gunston?
Didn't he do characters?
He was an Australian guy, totally weird, but brilliant.
What did he do?
He did a TV show in the 70s called, because you're in New Zealand, you might not have seen it, probably not, but it was a...
The mother and son thing, isn't
it? But what he originally did was, he was, it's Gary McDonald, the actor, but he did this character called Norman Gunston.
Yeah.
And Norman Gunston was a small town reporter. Working for a local rag. That was the character.
Yeah.
And he'd turn up, like the Rolling Stones had come to Melbourne, and Norman Gunston would pop up and start asking them questions. And, Muhammad Ali, people like, he talked to Whitlam. He would just pop up.
Oh, no.
Because he had a show on the ABC, so they'd push him everywhere.
Yeah.
But he was one of those real diamonds, like real kind of like just magical, like absolutely, like, completely, like you've never seen anything like it.
I like the weirder ones, like, and the weird stuff can have mainstream appeal too.
Yeah.
Like, trying to think of some off the top of my head, like, what's his second name? Sam Campbell. Do you know that guy?
Sam Campbell.
He's blown up. He's very successful, but he's really weird. He's like a little Brisbane guy, got a real strange voice, and he's moved to the UK and he's killing it over there. Or like Aaron Chen, he's blown up mainstream, but he is quite weird and interesting. Like those types of guys. They're good examples of like someone who's quirky but still kind of cut through.
Would you let me ask you a question, because I'm interested, because I know you do a lot of stuff with the rooms, creating rooms and gigs, and I know you're gigging all the time, and you actually, I think you'd even post on Facebook sometimes, I need an MC for this, or I need or you do all that stuff.
Yes, sure, yeah.
If a genie appeared, Dan, and said, look, you're gonna be a Michael Kudinski or whatever. Like you're gonna make $20 million behind the scenes. By building up these.
I see where you're going.
And doing like you're gonna put a camera crew together. You're gonna film them doing special. You're gonna hire out the Athenaeum. You're gonna make a killing. Would you go for that?
I mean,
or do you want to be the guy in the back streets at Sellers on a Friday night, jumping up and having a crack?
Yeah, kind of. Probably you don't want to. How do I put this? It's like I don't want to never progress, but at the same time, I do have like smaller ambitions than that. Maybe so somewhere in the middle. Maybe it'd be good to you don't want to like plateau. It'd be good to keep making some progressions in that. Like it would be kind of depressing if I was still doing sellers at age 60 or something. But also kind of cool. I don't know. I'm torn.
But being a mover and shaker, you know. Like,
I don't think I even want to be like a
business.
full-time promoter. Like it's just I do like promoting other people and helping my friends and stuff like that. But it's you know what I mean. It's not my end goal. It's just something I do. It's obviously to get myself more gigs, like all of us. But I do enjoy helping others. Like I'm one of the. Blow my own horn a little bit here. I'm one of the few who runs gigs here that's quite happy to often not have myself in the lineup. But I don't necessarily think that means I'm anything special. It's just because I'm older, so I don't care as much. Like if I was 25, I'd be on every night if I ran a gig. So I'm just not throwing shade to those guys or girls. You get a bit older and you're like, well, I'm a lifer. I don't have to be on every single week. Whereas they're kind of like I was at 25. They're like, I've got to be on. Who's in the audience that'll see me? And you know.
And then let's be honest, because the benefit of running a room is getting access to the stage yourself.
Yes,
and honing your act.
Yeah.
Now this is a great segue actually because
love a segue.
How much material have you got? Like how much? I mean, if you got like I got a killer 10, an average 20, almost half an hour boring. But I mean, have you got like a killer half hour, or have you got an hour? Or
I kind of look at it differently. So like I've done loads of different solo shows and their various themes and things like that. But some people are really kind of like they hold on to everything. But a lot of the stuff I've got, it's just in the past. If I really want to, I can bring it back. But I don't feel connected to shows that I've done, 10 years ago. Like, it would seem weird for me to be on stage talking about
but if someone called you up and said, we need you to do 40 minutes.
Oh, easy. And
really?
I'm not saying, like, I'm going to smash out the park everywhere kind of thing, but I've done it for a long time. And if they gave me enough time and warning and told me what the vibe was, I'd be confident enough I would do a decent job, really? Just from experience.
So what your preference would be, like a 20-minute?
Oh, like on the safe side. So like, I'll give you this a good example. So like the other day, there was like a festival gig, and it's called like 5 headliners for $25 or something like that. So the standard is quite high. They're not going to just tap some rando who's, you know what I mean, good but like pretty new. It's usually people that've done it for a wee while, between 5 years and upwards kind of thing. Like somebody who's got 5 years but did pretty hot 5 years. So it's only like a 10 to 15-minute spot, but it's still, you're following like some pretty good people, so you don't want a newbie on. So I had like about an hour and a half notice or something to do that. So I'm at the level where if that happens, it's not going to freak me out, if you get what I mean. Get up there and do well.
So you're a seasoned, you're a seasoned, you got a good act, you're a seasoned performer.
Yeah, but because I'm always turning material over, I can see sometimes when the newbies don't kind of get it, because they don't quite understand, because in their head, which I'd get, they would just do this awesome 10 that I've probably got in my back pocket somewhere, but I'm trying to like write new stuff and work through new stuff, and I don't really care about killing it at open mic. That's not what I'm trying to do. Right. 1, I'm not getting paid for it. 2, I'm generating new material. 3, there's 4 people there. It's not my life, if you know what I mean. It's not the end of the world if I died in open mic. Whereas some of them will go have a cry in the car about it, which I would have done when I was 25 as well.
Well, look, we've talked on this show about a great comedian, Pommy Johnson.
Oh yeah,
he said,
legend. Yeah.
He said he's gone home from gigs crying.
Yeah, and I say that as if I haven't done it.
Yeah, I mean, I've done it as well.
Yeah,
I'll tell you this interesting story.
Yeah,
I did comedy in Melbourne for 9 years, then I moved to Sydney and did comedy in Sydney for a year. And comedy in Sydney is a very different.
It differs from city to city.
Well, because Melbourne can be a very theatre audience where they don't mind kind of going down a merry way. Yeah, whereas the Sydney crowd, you'd have half the audience is a hen's night, the other half's a buck's night, and they want to laugh every 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's type kind of type comedy stuff. Yeah.
Anyway, I did this gig. It was there would have been 12 people in the audience. It was just a tryout night.
Yeah.
And I was kind of experimenting, having a bit of fun, whatever. And the guy who ran the bar said to the promoter, "I don't want that guy from Melbourne coming back."
Oh,
This is in my 10th year
yeah,
of comedy.
Yeah, and you never want to
And
do
I
that, yeah.
and I remember just kind of like just going home, going, you know, like just, you know, after anyway. So I think we all go taken to that place at some time.
I've got a story that's exactly the same. So I've lived in Perth twice, and the second go around I lived in Perth, I brought my mate from Adelaide originally, but he lives in Melbourne. A guy called Travis Nash. He's a very funny guy. Doesn't do comedy now. He does all sorts of amazing creative stuff. Anyway, I told him, come over to Perth. I'll organise a tour for you. So we're doing all these like nice, you know, paid spots. He's headlining them or he's emceeing them, and he's done it a bit longer at me at this point. I'm doing like 15s and stuff like that. So we're doing our spots, and one night we're in Fremantle, and I think I was the MC, and I just was, I don't know, I was average. It didn't do that well. And he headlined it. He didn't do that well either. And they were about to leave, and the bartender just cleaned the glass, and he says to the promoter, he goes, next time, mate, bring some proper comedians, not these two drongos, and like points at me and Travis.
Yeah.
And I'm quite thick-skinned because I've got like a father who gives it to me just verbally and stuff, and I don't know, I'm fairly thick-skinned even though I can be vulnerable, but I just hear that and it sucks, but I move on, I just move forward. Whereas Travis, a more sensitive soul than me, he'll still bring it up every now and again when I see him.
Yeah.
It really stuck in his crawl or whatever, which I get, it sucks when people say that. But my mind goes, like, I have a lot of self-loathing, don't get me wrong, but my mind goes, who the fuck is that cunt at the bar?
I know.
Like, who cares? Some random cunt at a bar, cleaning the glass or whatever. And you know, it's like, fuck off, mate.
Yeah, you know? and let's also state the fact that when you don't have a profile, like you're not doing TV or radio or film, it's an up and down thing anyway. Like one night you're the funniest guy on the planet, the next night you can't buy a laugh. Yeah. That's just the way it is. And some drongo at the bars doesn't understand that.
Of course.
You know, it's all, you know, swings and roundabouts.
And in his defence, neither of us had good gigs that night or whatever, but it's not to say because we had one bad gig we're terrible at comedy. But
drongos,
or drongos, whatever. But like, it's a lot of people, because they don't, it's not their life, I get it. They just see you once and that's their entire opinion of you. They don't seem to think that comedy can vary from night to night.
I'll tell you an interesting story, because this reminds me of a story as well, because it goes to these bartenders.
Yeah.
I ran a room in, it was not Williamstown, but near Williamstown.
Yeah.
And I was running it on a real shoestring budget. Yeah. The pub wasn't giving me any money.
That's the worst,
and it was kind of like, no, what they were doing is they were paying for an MC like 150.
Yeah.
And I think, what else were they doing? They were giving everyone like a free drink who can't turn up, whatever. Yeah. Anyway, and I was giving away all these tickets for people to come to it. Yeah. And they would get a free soft drink, wine or beer with the tickets that they got.
Yeah, it's a good idea, yeah.
And so, so it was kind of happening. And then one week we had about 200 people.
Oh, wow, that's real good. Yeah.
And then the next week we'd have like 8. Because the tickets would be, people would. There was no.
I've had that before. You get a gig and it's just up and down. It's hard to get in the middle.
Anyway, what happened? Was that I used to go around scabbing cigarettes off people. Like the audience. And I used to get a free meal every time I turned as a promoter.
Oh, cool.
Free meal.
I love a free meal.
There were these two bartenders. Who just hated my guts.
Yeah, sometimes do hate the comics.
They were like, this guy's, and they're in the guy who ran the pub. They're in his ear. This guy's just using you. He's hopeless. Especially on a night where you have 8 people in the audience. Yeah, it was a fairly good.
Those are the nights when they can really talk about you.
But these two bartenders, they knew I was penniless. Like they just knew I just didn't have a sense of my name. And
that's fine though. Yeah, that's not their business, is it? Yeah.
No, I know, but it goes to show you've got to be the dance you do with the venue's got to be kind of delicate.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You can't kind of because the meal that they used to give me at that pub was like the main meal of the week type thing.
Oh, you can't wait for that meal.
I know, so I wasn't eating great.
Yeah,
and very skinny at the time. Yeah. But you've got to do a really interesting dance with venues because
it's hard.
Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, and even Maury, who we've had on the show, talked about the whole idea of when you're renting a space that they can just pull the rug.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so you've got to play the game and be very respectful of everything.
Is it worth running a room in this climate? Is it
100%? 100%, because it's like. it's very rare that it's a horror story. Almost all the time, it's either 50-50, you're to blame, they're to blame in terms of the faults of it, or they're great, you know what I mean? Like, I've had the odd bad experiences, but it's very small, small percentage of ones where it's been a nightmare. Like, the ones that I maybe when I was younger thought back, it was a nightmare. I'm older now with perspective. I'm like, well, I forgot I did this and that, so maybe that's 50-50, or maybe 70-30 in favour of them and me being young and stupid kind of thing. So I definitely think it is, because most of the time when comics, because we're all very egotistical and stuff, when they moan about gigs, you keep pushing them for info, and you're like, well, hang on a minute, you did that, and they're like, yeah, but no, hang on, and you try to get some accountability from them, and then eventually they're like, oh, I fucked up. So because to be fair to us, because I've fucked up a lot, it's like we're juggling all these balls, and it's really easy to forget that you've dropped a lot of balls and they're all over the floor, and you haven't cleaned them up, to extend the metaphor kind of thing, and then be like, look at him, he dropped the ball, like.
So what? Yeah. So what is the worst case scenario when you've got 7 tryouts on your?
Oh yeah.
Like is it what, they don't turn up, or they're just crass and crap? They go for 5 minutes, but they haven't got a single game. Yeah. Like what do you find what's the frustration?
Most frustrating.
Is it? A few more examples.
Yeah.
Are they kind of like rude to you?
The comics or?
Yeah. Or they. Sorry, Richie Tech guy's having a sneeze there. Richie Tech, that's
giving them the new variant. Yeah.
Or another one, they say, I'm just going to my car, and they hop in the car off.
So I try and do 2 things. So it's like, one, I will run a lot of gigs where my care factor is very low in terms of that. It's just an open mic for us to try material. And those are very easy to work around, because you've always got guys and girls on your phone. You go, hey, can you get here in half an hour or an hour or something, if that happens. And I always overload those gigs kind of on purpose, because they're just try out, muck around rooms. So I might book 14 people on purpose, knowing on the night we'll probably get 10,
Yeah, right.
So I've figured out little hacks around it over the years or whatever. No, I'm not saying they're the most amazing gigs ever or anything. They're kind of just average, but I've at least figured out the things like that, so I don't get too stressed out and that. But in terms of running like a Slack Pro gig, I find that's more of a nightmare, because you put so much pressure on yourself for it to run well and to make money and to pay everybody, and that's so much more of a headache than an open mic. Because at least the only thing can go wrong in open mic is someone says something a bit offensive, someone gets upset, which you can usually figure out with the bartender afterwards and stuff. Well, if someone doesn't turn up, who cares? I'll do a bit longer, or someone else will do a bit longer. And the open mics is very low pressure, because it's like people are paid $10 or $0 in some case. If it's not the greatest night in the world, it's not that bad. But if you throw $20 on a ticket, it's a premium game.
Or 30,
30, whatever. So much pressure. It's got to be a great night, and the standard is higher, so the pressure's on or whatever. Yeah.
Now, something you said, we're kind of in the home stretch here. We've got a couple minutes to go. Something you said when I was talking about making $100 billion to be you said that's not my primary goal.
Yeah.
What is the goal, Dan? Where do you want to you can elaborate a little bit about what I think you've said it a little bit, that the goal is just to be one of the guys around the scene.
Yeah, just so I was thinking about it today. So say in the perspective of the comedy festival. So this year was my 2nd comedy festival in a row after moving back here. And so the first year I didn't know, even though I've done it for a while, that doesn't really matter if you don't have amazing reels and stuff, because I haven't filmed enough stuff in high quality. I need to do that. So the first year it was back, it was like doing my solo show, doing some spots with a couple of groups I knew, but it was probably pretty thin on the ground in terms of the amount of spots versus some other people who are more enmeshed in the scene or whatever. And then this year, a lot more opportunities, because people have seen that I'm good, I've made friends with some people, blah, blah, blah. So it's to get to the point where like Kyle Legacy, he's a good example. He's someone like, he's much, higher than me, and there's some things that he's achieved that maybe I'll never achieve. But to be a guy like that level who can come to the festival, pick and choose his spots, doing spots every single night at the festival, several spots a night, in demand, but he's also, you know what I mean? He's not Dave Hughes or whatever. Like, you just use a random huge example. Like, he's kind of like a big cult figure or something, But that being said, he does the mothership in Austin, which is, the tippy top, but he's still like a grinder who does all the gigs. Like, I like that mindset of being successful, but you still want to do all the gigs,
Yeah, wow.
So maybe I could have my cake and eat it and be a wee bit successful, but still kind of a culty guy who's part of the gang, if you get what I mean. Like,
yeah. It's funny because I've often thought to myself, sometimes pray to the universe, about I just wouldn't mind a little bit of magic. I don't have to be in Hollywood. I don't. Just a little bit of magic, a little bit.
I mean, we all want some version of success, but I'm always just wary, maybe because I'm a bit of a '90s kid, sell out and all that stuff. It's still in my brain and my veins and stuff. Is like, I don't know, like if 28-year-old me saw me doing a Red Rooster commercial or something, I'd want to shoot myself. So and power to people who do that, good on them, no shade, blah blah blah. Just how I am and how I think about stuff like that. I know might be outdated, but I just hate that kind of stuff for me. So I don't want to become one of those guys, which is very ironic given I used to work in advertising, but it's behind the scenes. My face wasn't on products. So, but like I know guys from the New Zealand scene who do lots of ads, and I'm just like, ugh. But I get it, they've got to make money, but
yeah,
I'm a very 90s kid. I don't want to do that. Or some horrific, some of these horrific TV shows that people do. I'm just like, I get you get a lot of money, but they're like, ugh.
I know,
they're just so bad.
Yeah, on the nose.
But it's easy for me to say this when it's not being offered to me. Like, cut to 10 years' time, I've got a ripper roll in my hand and insurance in the other hand, and I'm on like.
Well, I'd do a double AMI.
It's got that. So
I know what you mean though. That there's that stigma about selling out.
It's just cringe, I find. Still,
yeah. Well, that's good, and that's important, and I think that there might be more wisdom in not taking that 10 grand ad than there is in taking it. Considering that you got to give half it to the tax man.
Yeah.
Dan, I want to thank you for coming on the show. You've great coming on the show. We'll definitely have you come back again. I'd love to have you come back and just give us an update and everything.
That'd be fun,
This has been Dan Brader. You've been watching the ARWIN KRAZE show. We'll see you next time.